Hey everyone, I'm Ben Parker, full-time LSAT teacher and co-creator of heyfuturelawyer.com, the world's most effective LSAT prep. I've taught thousands of students to break into the 160s and 170s using a reading-first, common-sense approach to the LSAT. Today, we're diving into a bunch of fun stuff. We're going to go through a Thanksgiving survival guide. My favorite segment of the day will just be dunking on the nation's 10 worst law schools, name and shame. We're going to make fun of them, basically. And the making fun of them comes from actually a place of deep, dark sadness, because these schools do con many, many people every single year, which is incredibly unfortunate. We're also going to go through a few mailbag questions today. I have a bunch built up over the past however many weeks. I haven't really been doing the mailbag segment. And honestly, just going through some rough advice, because there's some people that are making some really big mistakes. I had someone who talked to me within the past couple days, and my heart hurts for them, to put it lightly. They're making a very common mistake to rush into law school very unprepared. And they're going to probably fuck up their future based on their, what I would say is unwillingness to reassess. And we're going to break that down, not to be mean to this person, but rather so that you all can learn. I don't think I can save this person. I've tried my darndest, but I do think I can save some of you. So we're going to be talking about the likely playing out of law school when it's not done properly. Because those of you that have been longtime listeners know law school is a very fine career done properly. It is also the worst thing that can ever happen to you done poorly. Now, whether or not you do it properly or poorly is up to you. The tools are all there. The question is, are you going to rush? So we'll go through that. What else are we going through? Well, we're going to go through some Black Friday stuff, just giving you guys a little tease about what's up. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. When you want to get a high LSAT score, we are always there for you. Check out everything at the link tree in the show notes. Study with us. We have all sorts of resources to get you started. Honestly, we give away so much for free that you could study for free and make insane progress. So if you're going to complain about not having a high LSAT score, I better be able to log into your account and see that you did a ton of free shit, because we have so much free shit. And if you apply to law school with your 152, as our misinformed friend is about to, as you'll see, then, I mean, actually, hold on. I will save pulling up her account data until we actually go to her story. But for now, let's start with Black Friday stuff. So real quick, we're not announcing Black Friday yet. This year, as I'm sure many of you have realized, it seems like every brand and company is announcing their Black Friday stuff already. It is Monday, the 24th, as of filming this. Thanksgiving's not till Thursday, so we're still like 4 days out from Black Friday. Now, I don't know if we're just suckers and we should be announcing our Black Friday stuff earlier, but we're not. We actually are announcing it on Black Friday. It's all programmed, but we're not giving it out until earlier. Anyway, it's the best deals of the year. If you are going to be LSAT studying over the next year, there's a lot of yearly plans that we're offering. The deals are the best you're going to get. So if you are going to study with us in the near future, I would just take a look at it and consider, are these deals worth it? Second, we are actually opening 12 admissions consulting spots. I did want to mention that just because we do so little of this because of the bandwidth availability. But if you want to get a spot into admissions consulting, either to try to wrap up this cycle or for next cycle, you can. Now, those will probably fill pretty quickly just due to the demand versus supply. I mean, maybe I should just raise the prices and make it unlimited demand, but make it ridiculously expensive. But that's not the route we decided. We just decided to make it the price that we like and cap it. Anyways, if you want to do consulting with us, I would take a peek see at that, because it's probably the only time we're going to open it up until like next fall. Anyways, if you don't give a shit about admission consulting, don't look. And yeah, that is going to be accessible via the site. If you want to get access to it like right when it opens, just sign up via our newsletter. We'll send out an email at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Okay, so yeah, also on the website front, we've been doing a lot of work on our drilling algorithm. For those of you that don't know, drilling is a type of LSAT study you can do where you do one question at a time or a reading comp passage at a time. And this should not be the core of your LSAT study, but it is useful because what it does is it minimizes the amount of time you're spending on questions that are above or beneath you. So honestly, who it's best for are the people at the end of the spectrum. For people in the like 150s, 160s, you can get a lot from sections because you're going to get a lot of the questions right, but you're also going to struggle with a lot of them, to the point where you're probably going to have like 5 to 10 questions to really learn from every practice test. That evaporates when you're on the tail end. If you are someone in the 120s or 130s, there are only like 3 or 4 questions that you should really be working on, and those are the easiest questions because you're so bad at the LSAT that you need to figure out the easiest question. Not because like you're a dum-dum who's never going to figure it out, but because you got to build your foundation. Having someone do a really hard LSAT question when they're scoring low is like having a 5th grader try to do calculus. They're just going to stare at it and be like, what is happening? And ironically enough, people that score low tend to want to throw themselves in the deep end and want to do hard questions. Yet that's not effective or efficient. What they should do is really focus on the easy ones. So then they build up their foundations. They actually work on those underlying skills of reading and thinking. And then when they get to the harder questions, they've built those underlying skills. And while the harder questions are harder, it's not going to be banging their head into a wall. On the other side of the coin, we have really high scores, people that are very good at the LSAT. And one of the things you'll run into when you're good at the LSAT, and some of you I'm sure can already relate to this, is that the easy questions are so easy it's ridiculous, to the point where it's like almost a waste of your time, where you could put a gun to your head and you know you're going to get this question right for like the first 10 basically every time. So for those people, it's not that there's not value in doing the first 10, because sections are how you play on game day, so you kind of want to get that game day feel. However, as far as the learning goes, you're not really going to struggle with them. They're not going to challenge you, and you're not going to get better at the LSAT from those questions other than the test day feel. So for those people, doing harder questions is rather worthwhile because you actually get to what they don't understand. People will have gaps in knowledge. Basically, everyone does until you like have studied the LSAT for like years, like I have. But if you're someone even scoring in the high 170s, you have things you can clean up. And for you to do a full section, it's not that it won't help, but out of the 25 questions, maybe 2 of them are going to give you even half a thought to like be like, oh, what's going on here? So doing drilling when you are one of those people is efficient. What drilling is it's an adaptive algorithm that basically just serves up questions at your skill level. So you don't have to think about what question it's giving you. It will just give you questions that you are likely to not struggle with, but that are at your level. The learning science shows that roughly 75 to 85% success rate is optimal. So enough to where you can figure most of them out, but still challenging you about 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 questions so that you are still making mistakes. For someone who's really bad at the LSAT, it's going to be easier questions, but that's the point. Because if you're ever missing the easier questions, that's a giant problem. The dirty secret about LSAT prep is a lot of these questions are 5th grade level. Like smart 5th graders would figure them out. So you should be expected to get them all right on the easy ones. And until you can do that, you shouldn't move past them. And like I said, also on the higher end, it's very useful because you're not wasting your time on the ones beneath you. Now, reading column is a little bit trickier because it serves up one passage at a time, which is good for practicing solving questions because drilling is not timed. It's just doing a question or a passage in isolation. And by doing that, you can work on those muscles of I'm going to solve all these questions. All the support is in the passage. I'm not just going to pick an answer. And that is a piece of advice that most of you need to incorporate into you. A lot of you really do think about timing. I mean, the amount of you that have a timing strategy, if you have a timing strategy, you're focused on the wrong shit. The LSAT is about getting questions right, not finishing. And the fact this is a debate in the LSAT world, which for what's worth, I take the odd side of the debate. Most people are like, you need a timing strategy so you finish on time. My timing strategy is go get accommodations. I'm kidding, but also kind of until LSAT patches up their broken system. That is the actual strategy that you should all do. For what's worth, I did it in 35 minutes, but also the way I got done in 35 minutes was not by rushing, it's by being good at the LSAT. Because when you're good at the LSAT, the questions are not difficult and you don't rush through them. In fact, I did a drill set yesterday of 5 questions, and my account on our website is, actually, I'll show you all my history real quick on our website. My account is pretty fresh because I mostly just use it to play with things. In fact, hold on, let me share my screen for the YouTube people. So on YouTube, you can see I have some ones, but I've mostly just like tested it for testing purposes. Like most of mine, I don't even answer a question, or I've answered like 1 or 2. But yesterday I logged in, I did 5 questions and I got all 5 right in 1 minute and 13 seconds. I was averaging like 15 seconds per question. The LSAT is insanely easy when you're good at it. So if I did a 20, so like how fast am I going to do the first 10? I don't know, 4 to 5 minutes, but not because I'm rushing, just because they're easy. They're not hard. And I'm very quick at this. My processing power is insanely high because I've done so much LSAT. I'm definitely in like the top 10 people in the world that have done the most LSAT, which is crazy given I'm only 26, but you know, I'm one of the true LSAT dorks who I'm not, I'd say one of the most longest LSAT people. Like there are LSAT people you can point to that have been in this field for longer. I don't know that there's anyone that got started as young as I am. I'm a prodigy, you might say. Precocious, if you want another big vocabulary, which means, you know, gifted beyond their years. I'm kidding. I do these little segments so my wife makes fun of me. In fact, she had quite the thoughts about last week's segment about how I'm always right. She didn't necessarily appreciate that. Anyways, my point is to say that when you get really good at the LSAT, the really easy ones become beneath you. And this whole drilling algorithm is just meant to take all of that guesswork out of it. Also has explanations. I can't show you all because it'll show questions, and LSAC is very clear about not showing questions for freezies. Anyway, the point is though, is that you can access this for free with all of one practice tests. They're also explained by me. So if you like how I talk, you're going to get my explanations. And then if you want access to this, you can upgrade. Any of our plans have access to it, and that will have all the questions as opposed to just some of them. Okay, so that's drilling. It's a really good feature. A lot of drilling on other sites is not appropriate, in my opinion. There are other good ones, don't get me wrong. But the main mistake with drilling is when people do it by skills. Like, in fact, if you're looking on the screen, you can even see this. We have it sorted by question type. You guys really shouldn't do this. We only gave it because people were nonstop bugging us about having it by question type. Studying it by question type is very suboptimal. When you take the LSAT on test day, there are 25 questions and they're going to mix the question types. So part of the thing is always reading it critically and being able to respond regardless of the question type. When you do 10 weakeners back to back to back, you get in this groove of I'm just doing weaken questions, and that's not the LSAT. The LSAT is a test of comprehension, not just weakening. So while it might feel good. And in fact, the learning science is not unclear on this. What they find is that practicing a repeated skill like this leads to an illusory mastery. It does feel like you're getting better. It does, like, I'm not telling you that you're wrong when you feel like doing this helps. What I am telling you is that feeling is incorrect. Feelings are not reality. So it may feel like you're making progress when you do 10 weekend questions back to back. I'm telling you, it is illusory. It is not real. It fades. And this is not some point of like, oh, Ben's saying don't do this because he doesn't have the algorithm for it. I have it right fucking here. You can see it. Like, I have created this. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. Nevertheless, that's not how you should study, because it's not how you're going to have it on test day, and it makes your underlying skills weak. And I don't want your skills to be weak. I want you to get high scores. Because the reality of why we're different in terms of the world of LSAT is that we care about results. A lot of LSAT prep is genuinely meant to coddle you all. Like, I'm not going to name any of our competitors, but there are competitors whose whole business model is just to validate, make people feel good, and make them stick around for a long time. And that's not, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I guess for me, it's hard to even digest why people operate a business that way. Because for me, it seems like the only way to operate an LSAT business is to kick ass at LSAT, get people the highest scores possible, and win based on quality. Ironically, we have like maybe one competitor who I would argue also does that. Everyone else is dog shit. And I mean, I guess it makes it really good for us because it makes it really easy to compete, because I can just be like, yeah, we get higher LSAT scores, come work with us, which is a very good selling point. I guess occasionally I put people off with my personality, but also, like, whatever. I'm not catering to the 3% that don't like me. It's fine. And all of you should leave a 5-star review or a like on YouTube, because we definitely get dislikes with all my hot takes that I should probably stop for HR purposes, but I've decided I'm never going to, because that's just not who I am. I will continue to say all the things about law school and LSAT and whatnot. Anyway, okay, so that was a much longer digression on drilling than I intended. I mean, we could go deeper, but we won't. Also, we made a bunch of updates to our various law school pages. This is meant to be informative for you all. So last week we talked about the law school BigLaw placement rankings. These are currently evolving a little bit, but we have made them better. We've added the debt to income ratio, so you can actually sort by what schools are best, which are worst. Also, all our formulas are explained on here. I'm not going to walk you through them, but we do disclose how we got our numbers. So if you're curious, like, hey, that seems off, I'm going to look at it. Further, these have only been out for a week, so if you catch a weird number that looks off, please tell us. For example, we had a school where the listed tuition was lower than the actual tuition, because one of the things you'll note is, let's say you click into a school, like let's click into Duke, which is ranked number 1 by prestigious job placement. If you click into Duke, what you'll see is the listed tuition is $77K. The average student only pays $50,000. This formula is actually being reworked, because the formula we have, oh, you know what? We actually did update that formula. So anyways, our math is there. If you want to check our math, you are welcome to. This is all just aggregating public data and making it easier to read for you all. In fact, I think it's probably the best informative resource on the internet. So shout out to us. It's actually incredible that we did it. Because not to say that we're not the best, because we are, but we don't have the resources that a lot of our competitors do, just because we're newer and we're like in our 20s. But nevertheless, we're straight up beating them in terms of producing better quality shit. Which I don't know. I mean, it's very encouraging for me to see that. But anyway, so what you should look at is any school in the country. You can see all sorts of stuff. We're going to look at Duke, for example. You can see their entry metrics. You can also see the class distribution. You can also see where they end up. This is the part of the marketing that the law schools will never tell you. They will never tell you how dog shit employment is at the average law school. Now, Duke is literally the best employment school based on just the raw numbers. Now, of course, Harvard and Stanford are also great. A lot of people will self-select into other jobs out of Harvard and Stanford, but by the pure metrics, Duke wins. They send the most people to the prestigious jobs, which are big law firms, and federal clerkships. Further, you can see the breakdown of everyone else. And like I said, every school in the country, we have this for. So you can check it out via our page, which is heyfuturelawyer.com/outcomes. We also have other stats, like, you know, what's the rough cost of attending Duke? It's about $231,000, which, given your expected salary, is not awful. The expected salary is $188K. I will note that this is a little bit misleading, because not very many people out of Duke make $188K. A lot are going to make like $250, and then a bunch are going to make like under 6 figures. That is true of every school in the nation. So this $188K is very misleading, I would say, because if you take it, oh, if I go to Duke, I'm going to make $188K. The answer is no. You're either going to make well above that or well below that. The amount of people actually making $180 is rather small. But our job, once again, is to communicate the data and expect you guys to read it. What you'll also note is that the listed tuition for schools are fake. Basically, every school has an insane difference between the listed tuition, which at Duke is $77K. The average actual price paid by a Duke student is $50,000 per year. So I would check that out at the schools you're looking at. We also break down the methodology for that, as well as the distribution of it. We have bar passage. I honestly don't give a shit about bar passage, because I think the bar passage reflects a lot more about the types of students a school attracts rather than the way that Duke is teaching it. Law schools don't really teach bar passage, to my understanding. What they do is they teach all this abstract theoretical law, and then they hand you off to various bar prep companies, which I believe they're like Themis, Barbary. I don't really know them. I didn't go to law school. I didn't take the bar. I know a lot of people that did, but I myself did not. And you basically just work through these giant courses, and those courses teach you how to pass the bar. So anyway, I would not pay too much attention to this. Duke has an incredibly high bar passage rate, 97.5%. But is that because Duke, teaches really good law? I would argue no. I would argue it is because Duke attracts really smart, hardworking people, and smart, hardworking people do very well on the bar. So it's not that Duke is really good. And then further, in the converse, say you find a school that has really shitty bar passage. I don't think that's a reflection of the school. I think it's that they are fighting an uphill battle. In fact, let's go to Cooley, which is one of the worst schools in the country. They are, I don't know what they're ranked, but they're really weak. Thomas M. Cooley Law School. They have bar passage of 51.5%, which is really bad. Now, is that because Cooley doesn't teach the bar? I mean, maybe. Cooley is a dog shit law school, don't get me wrong. But is it their fault? I don't know. I think it's their fault in a way that they're admitting people that are never going to pass the bar, but I don't think they're failing to teach people. Some people you cannot teach. I will say this as someone who teaches LSAT. We have people that come to me and I'm like, I can't help you. No one can help you. Not because I suck, but because they suck. And if you're not going to study, you're not going to put in the work, there's nothing I can do for you. That's the same thing with Cooley. Like, these people come to law school and they're not going to study. They're not going to do the work. That's why they go to law school with a 147, 3.15. I mean, these people suck at school. They're not good at school. 147 has not put the effort in. I mean, what we find is that people that put the effort in tend to score at least like 160, which is incredibly controversial. People hate that. Also, the data does not lie. Like, we have the back end data. I can look at what people do versus their finishing LSAT score. For people that are moderately consistent, as in they study every day for like, call it 6 months, it really does end up at 160. So 147 is 13 points below that. A 3.15. I mean, I'm not here to judge GPAs, but when I went to school was easy to the point where, like, I mean, I got a 4.0 my last 3 years. For those of you that know the Ben lore, you know that I sucked at school my first semester. Even still, though, I ended with a 3.6. So no judgments, but these are people that have demonstrated very low entry metrics. And I'm not saying that these things are entirely predictive, because obviously can someone have a low LSAT and low GPA and succeed? The answer is yes. But the other part of that equation is that generally speaking, they will fail, because these things do reveal something about them. They don't reveal everything about them, but they do reveal something. And what they reveal, at least on the LSAT, is they're either a dummy or they didn't do the work, both of which are going to be a problem, because if you're a dummy, you can't cure that, unfortunately. And if you didn't do the work, I mean, you could cure that. You could start doing the work going forwards, but it was silly. Further, by getting a 147, even if you're going to fix that and then do the work, you just cost yourself like $300K, which is fucking nuts. Anyway, and yeah, as you can see, the debt to income out of Cooley is 2.88 based on our math. That's really bad. These people are going to be in a pretty fucked financial situation. Okie dokie. So those are our updates. We'll use them to go through our friend that we're advising shortly. But anyway, let's get into our other stuff. So real quick, Thanksgiving is coming up. November LSAT scores come out on Wednesday, the 26th. So if you're waiting on your November score, fingers crossed. I will note, if you don't score the score you like on November, I would burn the boats and apply next cycle. This cycle is brutal. Applying late hurts, regardless of what people say. I have it on my agenda to make a whole episode, like an hour long, on why applying late hurts, because it is rather complicated. It is also true. People saying it's a myth or not telling you the truth, or they are selectively cherry picking data, which you can do. You can find schools where applying late doesn't matter, but overall, it matters very much so. Anyway, I'm going to kind of lead with just the conclusion and not really provide the evidence, not because I'm unwilling to, but because that's a later episode. If you want to talk about why applying late hurts, just talk to me, send me an email. I'm very willing to defend my ideas, which I find very irritating, because a lot of the authorities in this space are not willing to defend their ideas. In fact, I got in an argument with one of them on Reddit. If you want to scroll back, you can see it. Not an argument. They made a very strong claim. I asked them to defend their claim, and they didn't. And they basically just took a red herring, which is frustrating. I kind of let it die, because, it is what it is. But it's irritating, because people respect this person very much so. And this person, in my opinion, just does not have the credibility that people give them. Anyway, that's besides the point. Where were we? So yeah, Thanksgiving survival. So your relatives are going to talk to you. They're going to give you a lot of unsolicited advice about law school, because they're going to go like, hey, little junior, you're applying for law school. How's that going? Are you going to figure it out? Or are you going to stay at home and be a fuck up? I'm kidding. But also that is often the tone, or not tone, but the connotation of their advice/questions. Now, there's nothing as confident as a relative, and there's also nothing as often incorrect as a relative. So these people are going to give you a lot of advice, and unless they're paying for your law school, I don't know that you should listen to them. I mean, you should listen in that you hear them out, but should you take their opinion that seriously? The answer is probably no, because does Uncle Dave actually control your future? The answer is he doesn't, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to take someone's advice who is not going to pay the bill and spend the time in law school, or really doesn't understand it, because presumably if you're listening to this, you are a relatively informed law school applicant, then they are not. I mean, often people have the misimpressions that lawyers are incredibly well paid, which, fact check, somewhat true. Some law schools are incredibly overpaying of their students. Many are not. Further, they don't understand the game. They don't understand that law school scholarships are incredibly distributed depending on your LSAT and GPA. So they're like, hey, just take the LSAT, apply, rush in, blah, 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 start law school, stop staying at home and being a fuck up. I think it comes from a good place. I get why people say that. It is also incredibly false. It is not true. Taking your time to do this the right way is always the right move. It doesn't feel like that to your relative who just sees you like basically stagnating, but it's not stagnating. They just don't realize that. So if someone's encouraging you to rush, I get where it comes from. It is the mature decision not to rush because of how much applying without your optimal LSAT, without your optimal application hurts. To not apply with your best LSAT relatively early in the cycle is setting yourself up for failure in your career. And I know this doesn't sound good, but you need to hear this because to rush will fuck up your whole career. Or I shouldn't say will because you could be the exception, but we don't operate off exceptions when we make giant financial decisions. We operate based off of the probability. And the probability is that by rushing not to go with your highest LSAT, applying relatively early is going to fuck your financial career. So please do not point me to an anecdote. That's why you're bad at the LSAT. Anecdotes don't disprove tendencies. And the tendency is that to rush is to fuck yourself. So please do not fuck yourself. At least take yourself out to dinner if you're going to fuck yourself. Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, sorry. I had a conversation with someone, which we're going to go into because like it really is insightful. But you guys, a lot of you do fuck yourselves. And it's insane that you guys do this. But anyway, that's besides the point. So yeah, what are some common questions that they'll ask according to ChatGPT? So the first one is, when are you taking the LSAT? Your response to this should be, the LSAT's incredibly consequential. I'm prepping it until I like my practice test range. I'm going to take it when I'm ready. If they continue to push, you can just ask them, do you understand how much lawyers make? I mean, I don't know that you should get into arguments with them. You could, because you will win if you're an informed person. But sometimes arguments are not worth it. Just because you're going to win an argument does not mean it's an argument worth having. Something that I always remind myself before going home for the holidays with the in-laws. I'm kidding, but also kind of not. Anyway, there's a lot of an argument. There's an argument for avoiding arguments is what I'm trying to say. Just you don't have to engage. Oftentimes arguments are not worth having. A lot of people do not engage in good faith. They're not actually trying to have a discussion. So when you recognize that in someone, it's often best just to withdraw and not have it. Okay, anyway, another question is often, why not just take it and see how you do? I got this advice when I was studying for the LSAT from actually a lawyer friend. He's a good dude. He just doesn't understand the game because even lawyers often don't understand it. He was like, hey, like you've been studying for the LSAT a long time. For those of you that don't know, I used to work at a lake in college in the summers. I would be the gatekeeper, as they would call it, which is kind of ironic now that I think about it. But my job was to basically check if people had memberships and open the gate if they didn't, and then close if they didn't. Now, often on not sunny days or on days where like people had work, not a lot of people would come to the lake because there are only like 200 members. So often I would just sit there and study for the LSAT. I had the Power Score books. I would read through them. Which, quick note, if you haven't heard me talk about Power Score books before, they are the best textbooks on the market. Also, textbooks are incredibly unprofitable, so there's not a lot of textbooks on the market. So they're okay, but it's definitely not the best LSAT prep out there. However, I would argue they are the best books out there, which is about as complimentary as I will get about Power Score. Anyway, so with that, he's seen me studying a lot. He's like, wow, you're doing a lot of LSAT. That's you should probably just take it and see how you do, because he'd seen me putting a lot of effort in. And at the time, I think I hadn't studied a lot. This was in my summer of kind of touching the LSAT. Basically, the only time I studied was at the lake. And I think over this whole summer, I maybe studied 25 hours. I probably would have scored the mid 160s had I taken the LSAT. Now, I'm someone who entered in the 99th percentile. I scored the 99th percentile twice, still before I was 21 years old. So for me to rush would have been silly. What points do I get for taking it at 19 versus 20? Honestly, none. I was a freshman in college, or I was a rising sophomore. There was no purpose for me to take it. But so anyways, my anecdote here is just to really indicate or illustrate that people that give you advice often don't know what they're talking about. That doesn't mean it's not well-meaning. I'm sure he genuinely was trying to help me, but nevertheless, it was bad advice. So you really need to consider, does this person actually understand the game I'm playing? And further, how much could this advice hurt me? Now, for me, it actually wouldn't have hurt me that much, because say I did take the LSAT, scored 165. I mean, I would have put a lower score on record, which would have been silly, but it wouldn't really have hurt me. It just would have cost me the $200. However, I do think there's a argument for taking things seriously, and taking the LSAT before you like your scores is not taking things seriously. All right, so anyway, what else could they ask? But my friend's kid got in with a blank score. Yeah, so this is when you get to dunk on say, hey, your friend's kid's a fucking idiot, and they're paying for a shitty law school where their debt's not going to be worth their salary. The reality of law school, and you guys should all know this, is that it is not an XY axis of did you get in or did you not. That is the wrong way to view this. The question is, did you get in to a school that is going to charge you an adequate price relative to the outcomes they get? So there's an XY axis, not of did you get in. That's a given. You guys are going to get into law school. Law school is fucking easy to get into. It's not hard. They take anyone with a pulse and a credit card. It's like ASU. I'm kidding. Shout out to our ASU friends. But regardless, the point is that the XY axis is one, how much are they going to charge you? So what's your investment? Are you going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for this school, or are you going to be paying zero? Because there's that. Now, you always invest your time. That is impossible to remove, and that's why you potentially shouldn't go. A lot of people said I should go just for free to go to law school. I chose not to, because even though I could have gone for free, I would have still been investing 3 years of my life. And I will tell you, I'm very glad I spent those 3 years working on the LSAT and building an LSAT business. and building our website as opposed to being in law school. It would have been a waste of my time. I have no interest in practicing law. It does not interest me. This isn't saying it's not right for you, but I am saying for me, it would have been a giant waste of my time. So you should only go to law school if you're going to use this investment of your time. That's irrelevant to the money. Then with the money, it's definitely a thought of like, hey, if you're spending $200,000, you should make sure that this is going to be $200,000 well spent. A lot of you, especially the younger ones of you, do not conceptualize how much money that is. It's a lot of money. I'm not saying it's life-changing, but it's life-changing when it's attached to a 10% interest rate and you get a shitty job on the back end, as like most lawyers do. Because most lawyers, remember, do not make six figures, they make under six figures. Now, a lot of lawyers are grossly overpaid. I always have to caveat this when I say it. Like, you make a shit ton of money as a lawyer. If you want to make the seven figures one day, you can as a lawyer, assuming you do things properly. Going to law school that will just let you in is not doing it properly. You're going to not end up in those jobs. Further, so that's one side, which is how much it's going to give you. Then further, what are the outcomes? Law schools do not have the same outcomes. Like we looked at our law school outcomes page, there are schools where basically everyone gets an elite job. Duke sends 87.7% of their class to prestigious jobs. Cornell sends 86.2%. Harvard sends less, but that's because people are selecting out of it. Now, if you go to school ranked number 24 based on that, already less than half of the class gets those jobs. So there are only 23 schools out of 191 that send over half of the class to prestigious jobs. At most schools, the odds are that you will not get a prestigious job. That is reality. And it's the reality that no one ever puts in their marketing materials because these schools don't want you to know that. Because if you know that, you might not pay $70,000 tuition for these schools. So with that, if you want to look, heyfuturelawyer.com/outcomes, you can look at every school in the country. That doesn't mean you can't get these jobs out of these schools, but it means it is not likely. And further, how low do we have to go for it to be under 10%? Let's see. The 10% cutoff is only 138 schools send over 10% of their class to these jobs, which I guess is actually not that bad. That means there's about 50 schools under 10%. That's still 50 schools where most of these people are going and expecting these jobs, and under 10% of them are going to get them. As always, you can look at each school if you want to on our website, but the idea that someone got into law school, therefore their plan is good, is just, it's not true. Law school is not hard to get into, folks. It is, did you get a good offer at a school that's going to get you the outcomes you want? You get to define that. If you want to be a DA, just go for free. It's not hard to get those jobs. If you want to work in BigLaw, set yourself up for the right schools, and potentially it's worth paying. If I were going to go to law school, I probably would want to go to BigLaw. That's just, I like playing at the top of my game no matter what I'm in. And so I would want to be, at the top of the game, which is the big firms. So I would probably try to go to like Cornell on a half scholarship. That would be my game plan if I was going. I'd probably try to get into the top schools. I'll also note my GPA is a 3.6. If I were applying now, I would not get as good offers. I probably still would. I get into Cornell, I bet. Pretty easily, actually, now that I think about it, because I'm above LSAT median, and that goes a long way at a school like Cornell. But anyway, I have no interest in going to law school for what it's worth. And had I gone when I was like 21 and actually applying, I for sure would have gotten into a ton of schools because it was so much easier getting into law school back then. Anyways, that's besides the point. The point is that it's your strategy to calculate. However, to pretend that it's not a calculation that needs to occur is delusional. Okay, so where were we? So basically if they say so-and-so got in, that doesn't really give them credibility. And then if they ask you, are you sure law school is worth it? Your answer should be, I'm not sure, because for you to know that for sure is crazy. I mean, if you guys want to be lawyers, shout out to you. Like, that is awesome, but some of you don't. And it's okay to bail out. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. If you're going for the right reasons, like, go. I'm proud of you. If you're not, you should acknowledge that, because some of you aren't. And then further, like, if you're going for the money, I guess there's two reasons to go. There's one, like, you actually want to practice law and you don't really care what you do in terms of the paycheck. This is like what you want to do. It's your calling. If that's your situation, go to law school. Just minimize your debt and go to a school where you want to live. It's a really easy formula. There are a lot of schools that give tons of scholarship. You can find them. If you're going to make the money, go to a school that's going to place you there. We have our outcomes page so you can see what schools are likely to. And, you have to get a high LSAT. If you're like, I want to make the money, also I have a 160. It's like, well, do you want to make the money? Because if you did, you should get a higher LSAT. It's not really an option, because the schools that will reasonably let you in with the 160 are unlikely to place you in those jobs. Once again, not impossible, but remember, we do not make giant financial decisions based on outliers. That's fucking stupid. Don't do that. Okay. Anyway, if you need anything to remind them of, for one, you can point them to this episode if you want. You can also tell them, like, hey, going slow means I'm intentional. I'm doing this the right way. I'm not just trying to rush into my career. I'm trying to do it properly. I'm working on it. I am chipping away at it. This is not something to rush into. To rush into it is to fuck yourself up. Further, you're playing the long game. Like, if you need to point that out, you always can. All right, well, let's do a few mailbag things. I don't know how long I've been going for. I didn't note when I started, so I have no idea how long I've been going. But what I do have is some emails in the queue. So let's go through them and see what we got. Starting with, I'll actually answer this. This person asked about the timeline. Did I address this? I'll address it again. If I did do it, it's multiple episodes back. But they said, I don't understand the timeline. Also, they emailed me what timeline, all caps. So this is someone who, in all likelihood, I have set off their alarm bells, not as an attack mode, but they probably heard something from me they don't hear elsewhere, which is that, hey, to apply to law school properly, you need to apply or start pretty early. Well, like, for example, this is fall 2025. If you want to attend in fall of 2027, basically 2 years from now, a little bit under, call it 20 months, 18 months, you need to be starting to study for the LSAT like about now. And that's really early. A lot of people don't even realize they want to go to law school this far out, but to plan, that is the case. So often when they hear that from me, they're like, oh, fuck, this guy is the first person who's kind of challenging the timeline of like, you can just start, study for the LSAT for 2 months and apply for the same fall. I mean, you can, but like we just talked about, that's how you end up overpaying for a shitty law school. So anyway, let's get into it. So she says, I don't understand the timeline. Yeah, so the basic timeline is you want to apply in September, the year before you attend. Now that means because the LSAT takes, call it 6 months to study for, if you want to take the August LSAT and the June LSAT because you have score ranges, that means you probably want to start studying in about December the year prior, which if you're applying for fall 2027 means you want to start studying now. That also means if you're applying for fall 2026, you're fucked. I'm kidding, but also like, you are way behind. And to deny reality is not mature. It is immature baby shit to pretend like you're further along than you are. Just go like, oh, it's fine. So-and-so says it's fine. My friend at X law school says it's fine. Disregard the fact that they're paying like $50K a year for a school where they're likely to make $50K a year. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that you have to start absurdly early for this process. That's not an endorsement of that, but it is a description of reality. And denying reality does not make you immature, or sorry, it does not make you smart, it makes you immature. Anyway, she continues, I understand that the timeline doesn't matter until your numbers are where they need to be. Good. In an ideal world where your numbers are perfect and you're ready to start law school in September, what is the timeline for that? Well, that means that you apply the September before. Ideally, you have your LSAT and everything ready to go a year before you apply. Is that absurdly early? Like, yeah, it is. But also, this is a game where 20% of people win and 80% of people lose by the metrics. If you want to be part of the 20%, you set yourself up well. You can be part of the 100%. That's a guarantee. Like, you can for sure go to law school no matter when you start and when you apply. But the question is, are you going to be part of the 20% that is well off for having gone to law school, or are you going to be one of the suckers who's fucked for having gone to law school? And if you rush, you can definitely be part of the 100%. Like, I'm not saying you can't. What I am saying is you won't be part of the 20% where this is a good investment. Anyway, she continues, when do you need to be ready for each step in the admissions process for T25 schools? Well, it doesn't really matter the ranking of the school you apply to. Also, don't ever say the T25 to me. I'm kidding, but also like it's not real. The T25 is false. If we go to our outcomes page, there are schools in the T25. In fact, let's sort by US News Rank. Just to pull this up for you all real quick, just to find a dud in the top 25. So as you'll see, most of the top 25 schools have pretty good placement. But yeah, University of Minnesota, 30%. That's in yellow according to our color code, and they're a top 25. Same thing with Georgia and A&M. Like they're up there. But look, there's schools well below them that are way higher. Like USC is ranked 26, but they literally double up Texas A&M and Georgia and Minnesota into prestigious jobs. So they're like not T25 law school, but USC is a way fucking better law school than any of these T25s. So this is what I mean by when you guys mention ranking, I kind of know it makes you an unserious applicant. T25 isn't fucking real. It is real in that those schools are ranked that, but there's no meaning to it. They're not better schools. Don't go there unless you want to live in Minnesota, at which case I would argue going to USC would probably still give you a better degree than Minnesota. Because the other thing is these firms that are making hiring decisions, they're not watching the year-by-year movement. They know general trends. They know USC is one of the most prestigious law schools in Southern California. And if you're in, say, Michigan, like, Minnesota's an okay school, but USC still has more clout. So anyway, please stop mentioning the T25 to me, please. T14 is real, but even the T14 loses something because Harvard and Stanford are very different from like Georgetown. So anyway, it is also like T50. T50 is fucking silly because like look at Utah, 18%, but they're a T50 law school. And then if you scroll all the way down, there's Howard, 50% placement despite being ranked 125. So when people mention like the top 100, the top 50, the top 25, what that tells me is there's someone who doesn't understand the game. Because if you understood the game, you would never mention those things. So I do think that if that is something you were thinking about, you need to reconsider how you are approaching this process because it indicates, at least to me, that you don't understand how this game is played. And the game is not played by ranking, the game is played by placement. You actually need to understand the outcomes. However, if you want to talk about the top 25 law schools by outcome, I think that is actually a pretty good ranking. Like I would consider all top 25. Oh, to be fair, like the drop off from 25 to 26, like it's not real. Emory versus Howard, there's no difference. They're still really good law schools. Anyway, and we've talked about how Howard and why Howard might evaporate with DEI kind of ending. I'm not going to get into that here because I've talked about it in the past, but Howard may drop, is just to put it lightly, just because if there is less DEI, which to be fair, I don't know if that's still the case, because I was hearing a lot of headlines about DEI being cracked down on in like the law firms by the Trump administration. I don't know if that's still occurring, if it has like the focus has turned to other things, but anyway, Howard is kind of an oddball because they're an HBCU. If you're like, I don't know. What I would say is proceed with caution. None of these things are ever guarantees. But I would consider Florida to be much more of a guarantee than Howard's because of that, if you get what I mean. Oh, yeah. Cool. So where were we? The email that I haven't really read. I got partway through it, and then I started ranting about why ranking is stupid. What's the timeline where you need to be for each step in the admission process? Okay, I'll make it very simple. So you want to be done with I would start for the LSAT the December, 2 years before you want to attend. Study the LSAT, ideally take April if you're ready. Then you have June as a second take, and then you have August as a third take. The reason we do that is because you guys have score ranges. I've talked about this many times, but you do not have an LSAT score, you have an LSAT fluctuation. So say you're a 165, on a bad day you can score 161, on a good day you can score 169. If you only give yourself one take, the odds of you getting a lower score in that range is higher. Whereas if you take it 3 times, the odds of you getting a higher score, not guaranteed, but it's a lot higher because you get to roll the dice 3 times as opposed to rolling it 1 time. If you're trying to roll a dice and score and get a 6, would you rather roll it 1 time or would you rather roll it 3 times? It's fucking obvious. Okay, anyway, so you start that, then you ideally take April, June, August, and then like September, October if you need them, but ideally not. You apply ideally in September. Now, I find that applying before Thanksgiving is generally the cutoff where it's like good versus bad. This is not a perfect rule, and it depends on school and it depends on cycle. There are years where it's okay, like in quotes, to apply later. There's also years where you got to apply earlier. There's also schools that take applying early very seriously. There's ones that don't. As a general rule, because you should be applying broadly to give yourself lots of options, I want you applying in September or October. If I were paying for it, I would insist that you do that. I would not give you $1 to apply if it wasn't that. Now, you all are adults. You can choose what your own futures are. But remember, this is not a game of did you get in or did you not get in. This is a game of what is your outcome going to be. Okay, so that's that. That's the timeline. Also, I noticed we didn't do the 10 shittiest law schools. We're going to scrap that and not do the 10 shittiest law schools just because we're like well in. You know what? I'll rapid fire them and then we'll like dive into them next week. The 10 shittiest law schools by debt to income. Number 1, University of Montana. Shout out to Montana. Now, what is notable about Montana is they actually have a really high federal clerkship percentage. So like for 10% of them, it's a great law school. For 90%, not great. Number 2, John Marshall in Atlanta. Don't know a lot about it, but their debt to income is over 3. That's not good. Number 3 is UMass Dartmouth. I didn't even know they had a law school, and you shouldn't either because you should not be considering attending because it's dog shit. There's a lot of schools in Massachusetts. UMass Dartmouth is not 1 out of 10. The next is Faulkner. I didn't even know what Faulkner is. In fact, where is that? Faulkner is in... Is that? Oh, it's in Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama. Yeah, once again, really weak. A 3.5 debt to income. The 4th worst law school by debt to income is Florida A&M, which I think is an HBCU. I mean, a lot of these are HBCUs because, I mean, it sounds bad, but I think a lot of the HBCUs are very predatory, and they put a lot of their students in insane debt. Not Howard. Howard's great, but I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't really go into that super in depth, but just because a law school says they have a good mission does not make it true. When you look at the math, and the math says that they are impoverishing their graduates, I don't really give a shit what their brochure or their website says because the math doesn't lie. Anyway, number 6 is North Carolina Central. I think that also might be an HBCU. I could be wrong about that, but once again, really weak law school. Still under 3 in debt to income. Next is Southern University Law Center. That's in Houston. No, that's in Baton Rouge. I thought that was in Texas. You know what? There's Texas Southern, I think, which is also a bad law school to my understanding. But anyway, the one that's top 10 worst is Southern in, was that Georgia, I said? No, Louisiana. 8 is Campbell. I want to say that's North Carolina, I'm noticing a trend here. These are largely in the South, which I think is, once again, I think they're preying upon minority people and selling them dreams, just fucked, in my opinion. But 9 is St. Thomas in Florida, once again, over a 3 debt to income. And then 10 is Toro, which I believe is in New York. And I believe, is Toro the Jewish one? Or is that a different one? I don't think they're Jewish, are they? One of them is Jewish. Anyway, Toro sucks. I don't know what they are. Is that in New York? Yeah, it is in New York. Okay, anyway, those are our worst 10. We're going to go deeper in the next episode, actually break down the numbers, but we don't have, well, I mean, we do have the time today, but I don't know. I feel like I kind of lost the flow, and it's more of a mailbag kind of episode. So, with the mailbag, let's read the next one. So this is a new one from a listener / someone in class who says, Ben, ! Having listened to several episodes of your podcast, I appreciate your direct approach and minimal use of introductions, so no intro. Which is ironic because you could argue your no intro was an intro. You introduce the fact that you're not having an introduction, which like I don't actually care. It's kind of funny. They continue. After beginning your October class, so as you'll note, I'm a little bit behind on the emails, I found your explanation of necessary and sufficient conditions very helpful. The way you explained it just made it click for some reason. Yeah, I mean, the way I explained it is very simple. You all have access to this, by the way, if you just want to do our course, which is free on our website. It's necessary and sufficient are very simple ideas made very complicated by LSAT prep trying to make you guys feel better about struggling. The whole idea is saying it's so hard, you therefore are not a dummy for struggling. You're just doing something incredibly hard. The answer is it's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. The LSAT is a hard test, but not for necessary and sufficient. Necessary and sufficient could be explained to an 8-year-old. And if you're like, I struggle with conditional logic, the answer is no, you don't, unless you're like actually low IQ, because you can't struggle with conditional logic unless you're low IQ. And I know this is against what a lot of people have told you, but trust me, you understand it. If I talk to you one-on-one, you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. I'd ask you questions like, hey, in fact, let's do it real quick. If I say to go to my car, I must grab my keys. And say, Ben grabs his keys, therefore he goes to the car. And the answer is no, because maybe my keys also go to the mailbox. Maybe I use them to go into my house. So the answer is like, that's confusing a sufficient condition, which is that my keys allow me to use my car for And sorry, I totally fucked that up. That is confusing me. A necessary condition, which is that to use my car, I must have my keys with a sufficient condition, which is that if I grab my keys, I must go to my car because I could be using my keys for other purposes. That's what happens when I rip one off the dome. Occasionally, I step on myself. But the point is very simple. When I say to use my car, I must have my keys, Ben grabs his keys, therefore he uses his car, it is easy to see how that's flawed because all you have to understand is that there's other ways I could use it. And that is necessary sufficient. It is not fucking rocket science. Anyway, they continue. Compared to in previous lessons, I agree with your perspective that relying on gimmicks or shortcuts for the LSAT is ineffective. Yeah, I mean, it's not great marketing, but it does work, which I do think having high LSAT scores is the best marketing. So I may not have the gimmicks for you all, but I do get you guys higher scores. So that is what it is. Anyway, they continue. The LSAT assessments are reading skills, and although it is challenging, it can be improved for sure, as long as one is actually putting in the work and doing LSAT questions. Totally agreed. They continue. Regarding the Born Poor documentary, which for those of you that don't know, in LSAT class, I talked about Born Poor. It's a documentary of these people that are poor and basically going through their lives. I think from when they're children to when they're adults, from when they're like actually little kids, like 5 or 6 to like being 25. And it basically shows the cycle of poverty. The reason I mentioned it is because I found the mindset of it to be very sad. And a lot of these people, even when they were like 10 years old, were convinced that they had no potential and that they were destined to continue the poverty, which to me was really sad. I'm like, you're a 10-year-old. You have all the potential. You could be fucking a Nobel Prize winner. You could go to the moon. Like, why do you think that you are destined to be poor? And it's really sad. And I can even see it in a lot of their parents, like telling them these kind of like, I mean, I don't want to say like loser mentality things, but like things that were going to like limiting beliefs about like the economy's screwed or like I can't get a job. It's like you can. And I actually don't care about the adults are like what they are. You guys can make your own decision. But it was really sad because I could see it poisoning the perspective of these children. And children should know that they are capable of anything. I mean, all of you should know this too. But the idea that you all are limited is such a false belief, but it is, I'd say, the number one reason people fail is these limiting beliefs. And anyway, that's the reason I brought it up, because I was like, this is true for LSAT people. People tend to, or not people, some people tend to really limit themselves in terms of what they think they can accomplish. And I find it really sad because it is true. Like, if you believe it, it ends up being true, but you don't have to believe it. You choose what to believe. You can believe you're capable of a lot. You can also believe you're capable of nothing. And if you do, it's going to fulfill. Anyway, he continues, I liked how it highlight how individuals often follow patterns dictated by circumstances beyond their control unless they actively strive for change. Yeah, I mean, it's true. People do tend to follow patterns. Like, the best way to predict where someone's going to end up is look at their zip code, which is very true. Like, I grew up in a pretty wealthy zip code, 80303, if you want to look it up, by the way. And that matters. And this is true across, like, zip codes. You go to poor income zip codes, they tend to do worse. And it's, I don't know, like, it is what it is. I think we can acknowledge these things and also acknowledge that a lot of it, I think, has to do with limiting beliefs. Because the other thing is what they'll find is that it actually doesn't correlate with your parents' income level. Like, it obviously your parents' income level will correlate with the zip code, but what they find is more predictive is the zip code. So even if you're a poor kid in a rich zip code, you tend to do well. And there's a lot of reasons you could argue for that. I mean, for one, I think you're going to be exposed to people that are very successful, and when you see that, you're going to understand how to do better. Second, the schools are going to be better funded, so like that obviously helps too. But anyway, the whole point of mentioning this documentary was that beliefs really do shape reality, and I don't know. I find it really sad when people have limiting beliefs. That's why I mention it, because it's just like, I was genuinely upset with the parents telling their kids that like they were never going to get a job. It's like, your kid's 13. How can you tell them? Like, they're all the potential in the world. To tell them that they're going to end up in poverty is just, it's so fucked. Like, you're putting these rotten seeds of thought in their head that are just not true. But when you believe things, they often become true. Anyway, he continues, one key example for me is the woman who pursued higher education and delayed motherhood until she was in a more stable position, demonstrating and overcoming her environment. Yeah, it is cool when people overcome. It's definitely harder when you come from these backgrounds, but people do it. He continues, the documentary did a good job of illustrating that while our surroundings do influence us, it is ultimately our own determination that shapes the extent of that impact. Yeah, that's what I would say is true. Because obviously, it is true that your environment helps you or shapes you or hurts you. Like, all these things are factual. Also, that doesn't mean it's entire. Like, it is part of the story. It is not the whole story. In fact, you are a bigger part of the story. So, I mean, generally speaking, people that listen to the podcast are not people that are poor. Like, I know my metric. You guys tend to be from means. Not all of you, but generally speaking, you are. Capitalize on that. Like, and further, like, don't feel ashamed for it. Like, once again, I grew up wealthy. I'm not like a rich person. Like, if you're from the East Coast, like, I'm not rich compared to like New York or like Connecticut rich. But like, my dad was a professor. My mom had an MBA. Like, I'm not some like poverty-stricken person. Also, like, I don't really apologize for that. And I had my advantages. Like, I didn't choose them. Neither did any of you. And further, neither did you choose your disadvantages. All you choose is how you respond. And so make the best of your situation. Anyway, but also I think like the biggest advantage I got was growing up around people that succeeded. And when I went to kids' houses, their parents, had serious careers and like education mattered. And these things were beat into me in a young age. And that is the biggest advantage. Not that like I went to better schools, because some of the schools I went to, like, I'm not gonna say they were bad because they weren't, but like, they're public schools. They're public schools. They're not awesome. I had a lot of shitty teachers. No, not to say it's like being inner city, but the point is that like I wasn't like blown away by the public education system, as I imagine many of you can relate to. I didn't have like tutors or anything, but what I did have is the influence of seeing people that had very, I'd say, not limiting beliefs, but the opposite, empowering beliefs. And I think that was like the best thing that I could have as a person. Anyway, as the person continues, I am enjoying both the program and the podcast, particularly the episodes focused on student loans. Yeah, those ones do not make me popular. Made me see a whole different perspective because at first I was like, nah, I don't agree with you. But then I was like, wait, he has a point. By the way, if you have any additional advice regarding main point questions, I would appreciate your input, although I suspect your response may be reiterate the importance of comprehending the material. Yeah, I imagine for main points, you're asking about reading comp, at which point, yes, you got to comprehend. But then further practice, all of you should be predicting the main point when you do reading comp. It is truly an unlock to the LSAT when you know what the main point is, because about half the questions will come back to it on reading comprehension. They only ask you about it explicitly once or twice, but they will often ask questions that relate very closely back to it, like the author's opinion, or maybe a detail like what was the purpose of this claim. But the whole purpose of the claim is often in relation to the main point. So understanding what the main point is gives you a North Star off of which to operate those other claims. Anyway, as far as the student loan thing, yeah, I mean, I think I'm right when it comes to student loans. I don't think it's a difference of opinion. I think I am correct and everyone else is wrong, which I know, like, this sounds narcissistic when I say it, but basically everyone is serious about student loans, I think, just comes to it with an incomplete story. And further, what I say is not considered a politically correct opinion. So a lot of people have heard, like, student loans being removed is bad, like, ipso facto evil, without really considering the alternative argument. And I'm willing to believe that people could disagree with me for like good reasons, but I find almost all of them just boil down to they don't understand the system, at least with regards to law school. Because once again, I don't understand how undergrad finances work. I don't understand med school, but for law school, I understand very well. And for law school, the student loan changes, I don't know that they're perfect, but they're definitely a positive change because it was so beyond fucked to begin with that really any change in my mind was a positive change. That's my defense, because occasionally people are like, oh, like, you know, you're a defender. It's like, not really. It's more so that the system was so fucked that any messing with the system for me would be a positive change. It's like with our healthcare system. I mean, not to like give takes on healthcare, but I think basically everyone can agree that healthcare in the US is suboptimal, whether you're on the right or the left. But anyway, so like any change, I would argue, is probably a positive change. I don't know that that's, I mean, I'm not actually suggesting what we do with healthcare because I don't know. I haven't spent the time studying it. I don't understand it. What I do know is that it kind of sucks the way it exists. And so that's where my support for the reform came from, is not a support of the reform, but a condemnation of what existed before. The system that existed was so fucked and so bad that any change was a positive change. Okay, what else do we have? From another one, this is someone who I actually thought you might be a troll, but I'll read it. I'm going to assume you're not a troll. Just your name thought it's not the most traditional name, given your surname does not align with your first name. For those of you that are curious, I'll do this because it's relatively anonymous. Their first name is Middle Eastern, and their last name is well, how do I put? Because I don't want to say what it is, and I don't want people like doxing you, but it's a relatively sexual part of the body. I'll put it that way. So I thought this might be a troll. It also could be your name, so I don't mean to like offend you if that's the case, but I just thought it was like, that's kind of odd. That's also not typically a Middle Eastern name. But I'm going to take you at your word and assume you're a genuine fan. Anyway, they say, hey man, I love your podcast. I'm a big supporter. Thank you. I appreciate it. I recently scored a 167 on the September LSAT and have a 3.93 LSAT GPA. Yeah, so, you know, good numbers, not elite. To get a 171 would make such a huge difference, but you're going to get good offers already. It's just you could do better. While I'm proud of these numbers, I'm also aware that this is an exceptionally competitive cycle. Also true. I'm debating whether to retake the LSAT in hopes of securing a higher score and potentially applying next cycle instead. Yeah, do that. I mean, the only situation is like if you know you want to do public interest and you're going to like be a prosecutor, then you can probably find schools in areas you want to live where you can get a good offer this cycle. But if you are going for prestige, then yes, attending next year would make a lot more sense. They continue. My priority is either attending a T14 school or receiving a full ride scholarship, ideally at the University of Maryland. I mean, you might be set up for Maryland already. Let's just pull them up on our website. So if I pull up Maryland, just to see what their metrics are, because you may be over both medians, at which point you're probably going to get a decent offer. So Maryland does not have the best employment, but they do give 44% of the class half to full, and they give 3% of their class full rides. Now, their LSAT range is a 163 and a 3.7. So you're well above both medians. You're also both 75th percentiles. Not that that really matters, but you are above them. So if I were you, if you're in a good spot for Maryland, I would apply and see what they give you. You might have to like bug them for a full ride, because one of the other student loan changes, which I won't get into, is that the full rides this year are going to be fewer and further between, basically because they can't scan the people at the bottom. They can't pay the people at the top. And you are at the top for this person. So you could always see what they give you, because if going to Maryland on a full ride is worth it, then yeah, you could go. But here's the thing: what if you can get to like a 175, a 173? Because you could maybe go to Georgetown on like decent scholarship, and that would be a much better outcome because you're in Maryland. And you know, if you get to a 172, you're already above median GPA. you could very well have a much better school to attend for probably similar price. Anyway, so that's my rough advice for you, which is like I would take the year unless you know for sure you want to be like a DA, at which point I would probably just get a full ride to Maryland and attend this year. They continue. I prefer to stay on the East Coast, and I'm applying to all schools in Maryland, Virginia, and most in DC, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and then some California schools because I'm getting fee waivers. I'm just not sure whether my current application will be strong enough to make that possible. Yeah, you'll probably get a full ride. Like Seton Hall, I'd imagine will give you a full ride in New Jersey. I'm trying to think about other schools right off the dome. I mean, some of the shitty New York schools, but you probably don't want to go to a shitty school. Pennsylvania, Penn State will probably give you a full ride. But like then the question is that worth it this cycle, or would you rather go next cycle on a better deal? That's a decision only you can make. But like if it were me, I would go next year with a higher LSAT, a few points higher. The other point that we don't really have here in terms of data is I don't know where that 167 falls. If that's in the middle, the high end, the low end, it is somewhere in your range, but where in the range? I don't know. Because if that's like your best score ever, there's a lot more of an argument to apply currently, especially if like say you study for a year and a 167 is like your highest score ever, then yeah, you probably should just go because the odds of you improving are a lot lower. If this is like, oh, I studied for 2 months and cranked out a 167 and I've practice test way higher, like a 172, then yeah, keep studying, bump that range up and get your higher score. So a lot of this depends on data that we don't really have, but I'd say the big question is where does that LSAT fall in your range? And then second, what do you want for a career? Do you want to be a DA or do you want to go to BigLaw? Because if you want to go to BigLaw, for sure, go next cycle and get a better offer. If you just want to be like a DA, then yeah, you can go this year. They continue. For letters of rec, I've secured 4. Don't submit 4, but like it's good that you have them. One from a former professor I TA'd for, one from a previous work supervisor, one from a former state delegate who awarded me a scholarship during undergrad, and potentially one from our state senator who has also supported me through scholarship. I've always had a job. My resume does not align with anything law related. You worked for a state senator and a delegate. Are these people that just gave you scholarships? Because if they just gave you scholarships and you didn't work for them, you probably don't want them. These need to be people that oversaw you. And you said these were glowing in parentheses, the two from the state delegate. But yeah, I mean, the TA professor and your supervisor are probably the most appropriate to submit out of the two that you have. I mean, I haven't read them, but out of those 4, I would submit the first 2. A side note for you all is that you don't want to submit all 4 letters of rec. They do not want to read all 4 of them. Letters of rec are a crazy check. Can you get someone to write good things about you? And the difference from 0 to 2 is a lot bigger than the difference from 2 to 3. There are diminishing returns, and submitting more, it's not really adding anything to your application, but it is adding more work for them to read, and they don't want to do that. So generally 2 is good. If you have 4 and they're like all awesome and if it's like Obama and Elon Musk and Michelle and they're all going to write how fantastic you are, then yeah, submit all 4. But that's typically not the case. Typically it's just like randos and they're just saying kind of like the same shit, at which point, why are you submitting 4? They continue. I also come from a disadvantaged background. I'm Pakistani, Muslim, queer, trans. This is also where I thought it might be a troll. And this is meant to be harsh, but like that is not generally my demo of people that like me. In fact, it's like often the demo of people that kind of hate me. So that's why I thought like this one plus the name might be fake, which like once again, I don't mean to be judgmental. And I'm glad that you like me because like I like everyone. I'm like, it's just I find that the response tends to not always be the same. They continue. I'm from a low income redacted family. Because it's a city. Single mom who is undocumented, and I plan to incorporate that context appropriately into my materials. Yeah, I mean, in your diversity statement. So, sure, it should help. I mean, it's interesting, which is different. They continue. I'm currently working as blank. I'll admit that. I'd really love for you to review my personal statement on the podcast. Sure, send it in. I'd be really interested to read it. They continue. Even with all this, I'm unsure how my application will hold up in this cycle, especially with my goals in mind. I really want to submit all my applications, or most of them before Thanksgiving. Oops, sorry on the late reply on that. Anyway, they continue. If you have any insight or recommendations on whether I should move forward now or reconsider retaking the LSAT apply next year, I'd be extremely grateful. Do you have any insight? Yeah, I kind of gave it as we went, but overall, it depends on your goals and where that LSAT falls. I mean, a higher LSAT will always help, and yes, this is a really bad cycle, but once again, if you want to be a DA in Maryland, you're there at those schools. So it really depends on like what's your goal. If you want to do BigLaw and make tons of money or be a federal clerk, then yeah, you gotta, or not that you have to, because like once again, you can point to exceptions and say, hey man, I know someone who went to law school at X law school and became a federal clerk. The answer is yes, but we don't, once again, repeat it with me, we do not make giant financial decisions based on exceptions. That's fucking stupid. Oh yeah. So yeah, good email. I'm glad you're a fan. And yeah, feel free to hit me up with your personal statement if you want advice on that. All right, so we have another email from someone, and they say Northwestern optional essays. Hey, quick question for you. I'm a splitter applicant with a 3.3 GPA plus 173 LSAT. So basically at the median for Northwestern on LSAT and needing to nail sauce tip the scales. Maybe. I mean, you guys tend to overestimate how much your soft factors matter. It's not that your essays don't matter literally at all, but they matter way less than you guys perceive. So let's pull up Northwestern's data. Northwestern they have a 3.95 GPA, so you're well below. You have a 173 LSAT. That's only one above average or one above median. And given that this year is probably going to be up, it might be at median. I mean, they may even push for a 174. I doubt Northwestern will push for a 174, but they could. And if they do, you'd be below median. So, I mean, a 3.3 might just put you out of the running based on their internal calculation. These schools have internal calculations based on your metrics that sort you into piles. And you may be in the presumptive deny pile already, regardless of what your essays are. You also could get in, like, I'm not saying a 3.3 is going to lock you out, but I will say it's really hard. And I just feel like I have to mention that because people often are, well, I actually find it tends to be both. It's either overly positive or overly negative. I just want to temper expectations. At Northwestern, you have a chance, but the 3.3 is a real anchor that's really going to hold you back. And the 173 is obviously a good point, but anyway. They continue. Curious if you have any advice on submitting optional essays for Northwestern. They're a bit unique with the write as many as you want approach. Yeah, I don't know how many they ask because once again, I haven't been doing much admission consulting recently. Although if you want to, 12 spot, Black Friday coming up. They continue. Would you advise applying the same strategy as you suggested for letters of rec? Focus on quality over quantity, don't submit extra. I think this would entail a killer personal statement and then 1 or 2 optionals. Yeah, I'd submit 2 optionals. But yes, better like quality over quantity is always true. I mean, that's true basically everything in life. Actually, no, that's not. Some things just do require quantity. But for essays, it's definitely quality over quantity. Make sure they're good. Make sure they really leave a positive impression about like why so-and-so kicks ass and why you would be an awesome fit at Northwestern, why they should take a chance on you. Because with the 3.3, they are going to be a little nervous. So you should probably write a GPA addendum. Now, without knowing your facts, it's hard to say what that is. Hopefully you had an upward trajectory. Hopefully that was like 10 years ago. GPAs are a lot easier to get them to ignore if there's distance. If you're 22 years old and you have a 3.3, it's a lot harder to get them to ignore it. But if you are 27 and then you've worked in like a real job for 4 years, it's a lot easier to get them to say, hey, that's not who I am today. That's who I was. But I have grown. I'm a big boy. And as a big boy, I'm ready to go kick ass. So yeah, that's the answer to that one. What else do we have? All right, another one from someone saying they're considering law advice. Hello, I found your channel on YouTube and really appreciate your insights. Thank you. I'm reaching out because I'm not sure whether pursuing law school is a realistic or financially smart path for me. Yeah, I mean, it depends. Probably, if you're questioning it, it's good because at least you're considering it. But let's see. For context, I have a 3.3 GPA in accounting and haven't taken the LSAT yet. Yeah, so obviously you're going to need to kick the LSAT's ass. And even then, you're still going to be limited in terms of the schools you can apply to because that will just anchor you down. They continue. I'm a URM applicant, which will help you. I think you're Hispanic based on your surname, which I will note there are more high number Hispanics than there are high number African Americans. So it doesn't help you as much as if you were black, but it still helps you for sure. Then it has some interesting softs. I'll be the judge of that, including being runner-up in an international competition. Yeah, I mean, depends. I've been a runner-up in an international competition. Because I mean, you can stretch that. International competition is very broad. You could it depends on the competition. Like, are we talking Olympics or are we talking like Clash Royale finals? Because like it's very different. They continue. Experience in Model UN, both as a delegate and coach. Yeah, so does all your competitors. Like everyone's done shit like that. Not meaning to diminish it, but like the idea that this sets you apart is really not that interesting. Like Model UN is like pretty boring, for lack of a better term. Now I'm ranking in the top 5% of chess players worldwide. Yeah, top 5% is not that crazy. I mean, don't get like I'm not trying to diminish. I'm just saying like you're not Magnus Carlsen. This is not like insane. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure you kick my ass in chess. Also, like you're 1% versus 5%. I feel like it's a big difference. Like if you told me your ELO, that'd be more interesting. In fact, let me Google up what the ELO is because like what is the top 5% chess ELO? For those of you that don't know, ELO is a ranking system in chess. Oh wow. So okay, you're a 2000. Okay, actually that is really good. That's quite impressive. In fact. So yeah, it's good, but people are better. So, okay, actually that is pretty impressive. I mean, the tricky thing is you're not applying to do chess, you're applying to law school. So like, it's a fun resume point, but the idea that this will like overcome a 3.3, your 3.3 is still going to fuck you. And so it's cool that you have a really high chess ELO, but it's not that cool. Anyway, they continue. Still, I'm unsure whether this makes it strong enough for the T14 without substantial scholarship support. I mean, as a URM, if you get a 175, you're fine. Like you're going to get in and you're going to get decent scholarship. At the bottom, T14, like strong clarification. This is not going to happen at like Harvard. They're not going to care. Your 3.3 is going to be a real problem. At UCLA or like Georgetown, it could very much so help you. So anyway, they continue. My main concern is financial feasibility. Well, so the debt to go to a school like UCLA or Georgetown, like it's real, but assuming you get half scholarship, you're probably going to be in for like around 150. You're going to make 250 starting salary if you go to BigLaw. Assuming you want to go to BigLaw. If you don't want to go to BigLaw, then yeah, you should be very financially concerned. But like if you are going to those top schools for BigLaw, it's a less scary picture, at least in my opinion. They continue, even with a very high LSAT, potentially even a 180, I'm not confident I'd receive the scholarship funding needed to make law school worthwhile. Oh no, you definitely would. The question is just at the schools that you want to attend. Because when you get like a full ride, like you'll get oodles of full rides, just from largely schools that don't place very well. So then the question becomes, will you get a full ride at a school that you like? I would wager probably, like if you get a 180, I'm not concerned. If you get a 175, I'm not concerned about you. The question is, are you going to get that? Because these are hypothetical 175s, 180s. Until you get it, which is not easy, it is possible. You can for sure do it. But I kind of almost, it's like, what's even the point about talking about this until you get it? Because like if you get a 175, like yeah, you can for sure go to law school at these prices. But the number of people that say they're going to get a 175 or actually do is very different. And that's why I'm hesitant to like overly index on this advice because you haven't done it yet. And I don't know where your LSAT is. You don't mention how you're studying for the LSAT or what you've done so far. You don't mention where your score is. And for all I know, maybe you have the reason to believe you're going to do it. But the only data point I have on you is that you have a 3.3 GPA. And don't get me wrong, GPAs are not predictive of LSAT, but they do correlate. And from what I've seen, I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but what I've seen so far is not a good GPA. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to depend on your LSAT. If you get a good LSAT, you can for sure go and get a decent offer. If you don't, like, yeah, it is game over. They continue. I enjoy my current path in accounting. Well, they just keep doing that. Law kind of sucks. And law would be supplementary education to strengthen my ability to represent clients and expand my career options. I mean, if you like accounting, I'll just double down on accounting and put your time there. Is it worth 3 years of your life full time, putting your accounting on hold, plus doing more investment in school in terms of dollars? Like, if you want to do BigLaw, yes. If you want to be an accountant, just keep being an accountant, get better at accounting. Like, I don't think becoming a lawyer accountant is the move. You should pick a lane, and if that's being a lawyer, like, more power to you. But if you enjoy what you're doing as an accountant, I bet you can make more money as an accountant and then not pay for law school. Like, I mean, how much can an accountant make? Is it that crazy for an accountant to make $250? I feel like that's not that crazy. So I feel like you could compete with what BigLaw lawyers are making by doubling down on accounting. And if you don't want to do that, then yeah, maybe there's an argument for going to law school. But if you genuinely enjoy accounting, I'd just stick with that. They continue. I'd have to step away from the goal if the finances don't make sense. Yeah. Given all that, I'd really appreciate your honest thoughts on whether LSAT prep and a T14 application are worth pursuing. I think it depends on where you start, because like maybe take a diagnostic and just see where you are. If it's like a 130, I would just give up. Not saying you can't do it, but you seem pretty content with where your life is, and the battle to get to a 175 is going to be so extreme. Not saying it can't happen. I have seen people go from 130 to 175, but it's not very common. It's like 1 in maybe 50. And that's the people that put in an insane amount of work. So anyway, it really depends on the goal. If you PT a 160 diagnostic, then yeah, it's going to be like light work to get to a 175. So it really depends on where you start, and then further how content you are with your career. Because like based on what I'm hearing, I would say just stick with what you're doing. Okay, well, I'm not sure how long I recorded for. We're going to save the rest for next week. I have a lot that we're going to bump over to next week, including the 10 worst law schools, which will be fun. We are also going to bank the email I said I was going to yell about, but just due to timing, we're not going to hit that today. We'll talk about that next time. And maybe she'll have responded by then, so I will have more of a conversation because I won't film it until next week. But it's been a rough one. Just like I'm genuinely worried about hers, where it comes from. So that's my tease. Okie dokie, outro time, because I'm doing them fresh now instead of the recording, because the recording's annoying. I kept listening to it. I'm like, oh my God, shut up, Ben. It's the same outro message. So anyway, thank you for listening to the Hey Future Lawyer podcast. I'm Ben Parker, full-time LSAT teacher and co-creator of heyfuturelawyer.com. When you want the best LSAT prep on the internet, you know where to find us. The link tree on the show notes, heyfuturelawyer.com. Find it out. And remember, act like a future lawyer, get yourself a good outcome, and do not listen to grandma at Thanksgiving.